Hi, this is Melissa Muir, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about the bracelet forming kit from Potter USA. We have two different styles of bracelets that can be made on this bracelet forming kit at this point in time. We have the Anticlastic and the Synclastic. Now there are actually 5 pieces to the full kit, however you can buy each piece individually if you only wanted one piece, or say something got damaged, you can replace just the one piece, which is kind of nice. And they're actually fairly affordable. The entire kit is about $250. Now, like I said, there are 4 different pieces, and they do come in 2 different sizes. And typically what I will do is I will use the 2 Synclastic or Anticlastic and then the 2 Synclastic together. And what that allows me to do is to shape the entire bracelet and then go back in and refine the curves a little bit more to conform to that oval shape that we like on our wrist rather than a round form. Now I found that with this particular kit and set, I do need to have my platen all the way down as it is a little longer, and I just don't have the room to work in here if I have my platen up too high. So the first thing I need to do is I need to install the base for this, or at least the holder, and I'm going to remove the upper platen to do that. Now I have to tighten mine and loosen it a little bit with an adjustable wrench here. So I'm just going to go ahead and come in and grab this nut, loosen that up a little bit, and install the bracelet holder. And again, tighten this back up a little bit here. Let's see if I get that straight on here. There we go. Alright, now the pieces that attach to this are magnetic. So all I need to do, slip it in, set it on, and it's ready to go. Alright, so the next thing that I need in addition to my material is I need to have my urethane. And in this case I'm just using a piece of 95 durometer. This is just a little 3-inch round of the urethane. Now you can put a contained piece of urethane in here if your jack will let you have that kind of room. Mine doesn't allow for it in this, well, at least not on this particular form, so I will just go ahead and use my uncontained urethane. One of the benefits of having the contained urethane is that you kind of concentrate where that pressure goes. Instead of allowing the pressure to kind of come out the sides on the urethane, it actually stays and it contracts a little bit more and will push the urethane up to the top into the forming of the bracelet. But this will still work for us just fine. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to, and here I've taken a 1-inch wide, I've patterned it, we've run it through a rolling mill with some lace, and I've rounded off my edges, filed them down a little bit so that they're a little bit smoother, and then there will still be some refining and finessing that needs to be done on the finish. But for now it's okay. So I've centered everything nicely. I'm going to start by putting the center curve of this just in the middle of that urethane. Now I found at first when I got into this, it was a little bit awkward because I kept hitting myself, but once you get the hang of this, it's not so bad really. And then it'll get easier as you kind of get going through this. So what I'm going to do is just kind of push this up. I don't even go really by the gauge as far as pressure goes, but I know that I can easily put more than 1,000 pounds of pressure or whatever on the urethane without damaging it. But I really don't even need to go that far. My copper is annealed, and in this case I'm using 22 gauge copper. So I've gone ahead, it's moved up just a little bit, and if I need to or want to, I can kind of help that along as well, because again, this is very soft copper. I'm going to release that enough so that all I need to do is just slip this in, maybe about a 1/2 inch or so. But basically what I'm going to do is try to overlap where I put that little bit of a bend. And again, you can see that the gauge or the pressure does its work. And as I put a little bit more pressure on the form, that urethane will go ahead and push this up. And again, I'm going to release, move it back in a little bit, and continue on. And I'm just going to continue to do this for the entire form of this bracelet. Alright, Alright, so I'm actually getting pretty close to the end of this particular form. Now I've started off, like I said, with the larger of the Anticlastic forms, and then from here I will switch and go to the smaller form, and I will just kind of finesse the curvature. Now again, it's not anything that you really have to have. If your metal is properly annealed, there's a lot of manipulating that you can do with your hands. And you'll find that a lot of jewelers will say that their most valuable tools are their hands. And the nice thing about your hands is they don't leave tool marks. You don't have marring on your metal, you don't have scratches. Well, sometimes, but that typically comes because your hands were manipulating another tool. So here you can see that I'm just at the very end of this, and I do have one last little bit here to run through. And the nice thing about this bracelet former is you've got this hole where you can actually pull this bracelet through as it's going through and being formed. So you don't have to worry about it getting back out of shape because you've run into a solid component or a piece of the equipment. Alright, so here's my bracelet so far. Like I said, I mean, I've got the nice shape. It's definitely the Anticlastic shape where we've got that nice dip and then that nice curve as we come around. However, it's not quite the bracelet shape yet. Won't stay on at this point. So I simply slide this one off, set it off to the side, install the smaller one. Again, line everything up so that it's nice and centered. Now on this particular one, I'm not going to go ahead and I'm not going to go through and do the entire bracelet. I just want to do the edges or the corners of this so that I can pull the shape into more of an oval shape rather than the half circle that we currently have at this point in time. So again, I'm just going to raise up the jack, again probably close to about 1,000 pressure or PSI. But it just kind of depends on what you need. I can see already that it forms nicely, and I'm not even up to 500 psi. So I can release that. Again, slide it in just a little bit more, and once more, come up. And if I want to, I can kind of help that along with my thumb. At this point, I will go ahead and pull this out. I'll show you the difference that we have going on here. You can see that we've tightened up the curve here a little bit. Put it back in on the opposite side of the bracelet. Now the bracelet that I'm doing is a little bit smaller. It started out as 6 inches long. This one I'm actually making for my 11-year-old daughter. So since she had a little smaller wrist, I did go a little bit smaller. But 6 inches to about 6.5 are typically what I do for my cuff bracelets. It just depends on if you've got a smaller wrist, medium, or even a large wrist. So this is the last press that I'm going to do on this bracelet. And then I'll pull it out and show you what it looks like. And again, I've just released the pressure. And at this point, I now have my cuff bracelet. I have a nice tight form here. The ends are curled just a little bit more than what the top is. So it should slide on fairly easily and fit pretty well. So you can kind of see, okay, I've got a nice comfortable fit. I'm not at all concerned about it coming off. If I need to, I can always just pinch it closed a little bit more. But at this point, I would go ahead and kind of finesse or clean up the edges of this just to make sure they're not too sharp or scratchy. And then I'd apply my patina, maybe throw it into a tumbler to harden it up for a little bit. But there's your cuff. Alright, for this next form, I want to show you the Synclastic form. And that's where we have the material kind of curved in on itself in both directions. Whereas the Anticlastic, even though it curves around the wrist, it still has that kind of a cupping shape. Now in this case, I have gone through and fold formed a piece of copper, again 22 gauge. You can do thicker or thinner if you would like. Just depends on what you want to do, and then obviously different textures. Last thing that I did on this was I did anneal it so that it will form a little easier. With the folds in here, however, it does make it so it's stronger, so I may have to give it a little bit more pressure so that it will actually form while working here in the press. So again, I'm going to center everything, line it all up, and I'm going to start off at the very end of the bracelet form, and I'm going to just go ahead and let this 95 durometer urethane kind of mold and push this up towards the material of my bracelet former for the Synclastic form. And again, on this one, like I said, I am going to give it a little bit more pressure. I love watching this stuff squish out too. It's amazing how fluid and liquid that urethane is. And then you release the pressure and it just sinks right back to what it was. So let me show you this. You can see that we've got a nice curve there all the way through. We've got a nice little bowl shape there at the very end. So again, I'm going to just try to overlap the forms or the presses on this. So I'll just scoot that in, again, maybe about a ½ inch or so. Line it all back up, and again, I'm going to press. Now, the last time I pushed this, I went up to about 1,000 psi. And again, you can just do it either by feel, or you can kind of watch and to see what happens and see, and you know, I guess just make a judgment call based off of how things are going for you at that point in time. So again, I'm about 1,000 psi here. That's good for me. Take it, release it. And again, just going to kind of move it back in again and push some more. Now I'm going to go ahead and continue to do this all the way through the bracelet. Alright, so now I've gone through and I've gone around the entire form with the large Synclastic bracelet former. I'm going to go ahead and slip that out, set it off to the side, and here's what my bracelet looks like. Again, we're more of a circle, a little bit more round, and what I need to do is just add a little bit of a stronger contour right here just along these edges. So I'll switch to the smaller form. Again, just come in, slide it in, line it up, slip my bracelet back on, and once again I'm just going to work just these edges. And this one I typically will move just twice, you know, once for putting it in and then raise my jack and then move it one time on each side. You can pull that off now and see kind of what we have. Not a whole lot of change here. Now another thing that you can do too, if you need to, and again, like I said, sometimes your fingers are the best for manipulating these things. So a lot of times I will just come in and kind of bend things around with my fingers. Now, if I happen to have some jagged edges or whatever else that need to be manipulated or rounded back out, formed a little bit better. So let's say that this one, maybe I punched it in a little bit too far. Maybe I pinched it a little bit too tight. You can kind of see that it's a little off shape now. So what I could do is put it back in around the bracelet former, and you might have to kind of wiggle it in here a little bit because it is going to be a little bit tighter. And then once I get that in there, raise the jack up to kind of smooth things out a little bit. And then I can kind of finish doing some of the finesse work on that way. So it just depends on what you want to do. But I do find definitely on the Anticlastic, using both forms is much more important than maybe here in the Synclastic form. So again, I will just finish this one up by adjusting it with my hands. Now in this case, my bracelet was 1.5 inches. In the first bracelet, it was only 1 inch wide. People have asked, you know, is there a minimum or a maximum? Definitely no minimum. You can do as thin as you want. You might not get as much contour just because the contours are a little bit smoother and a little wider. And then as wide, you can go as wide as what the form is. So about 2 inches, I would say. Nothing more than that.